And of course, it would work then. But you need to know that we're on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. And I don't know that there's any radio station, especially in this area, with as much coverage as we've got. Traffic, weather, news, sports. And we've got the whole thing covered. And at what point is that not more than enough, right? We have open dialogue with you guys. Right? A lot of people like to come on the Facebook page and leave comments, agree, disagree. We're all about the conversation here. And we just want to have it with you. 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, and NoogaRadio.com. So I think very often about who is underrated, who is overrated, who's accurately rated. We use the word underrated a lot. We use it way too much, really, to be honest with you. We use it, we describe people as being underrated who are actually not, right? For instance, I heard someone say, in the NBA, well, look at Cleveland. Look how underrated Kevin Love is. And I'm like, is Kevin Love really underrated? Is he, though? I feel like Kevin Love is very accurately rated. He's a solid player, great rebounder, three-point shooter, stretches the floor, can't play any defense. All of the problems that you have with Kevin Love, you're aware of. All of the upsides with Kevin Love, you're also aware of. Like, is he really an underrated guy? But sometimes we say a player is underrated. You don't think so, but if you really think about it, then they actually are, right? And I would like to present to you for that consideration, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, to me, is not just underrated. He's criminally underrated. And the reason why he's criminally underrated is because he is a guy that doesn't necessarily scream excellence at the quarterback position, right? He's got a whole lot of issues. He doesn't throw the ball downfield very accurately, right? The deeper you ask him to throw the ball, the less accurate he becomes. If there was an NFL draft, I'm not drafting Jalen Hurts because you've got to have downfield accuracy to make it in that sport. But you don't need it in college, right? And Jalen Hurts is pretty good in short to intermediate passes. Sometimes he makes bad decisions. Better than last year, though. Last year, he made freshman decisions. This year, he's obviously improved. He's continuing to evolve as a player. Through a lot of screen passes, a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of really short bubble screens, a lot of short passing action. That's what you're mostly getting out of Jalen Hurts. And then the big play downfield when he's got Calvin Ridley wide the hell open, like he did multiple times last week. And I'm not entirely certain how it is that happens. Like, because I don't understand how you lose Calvin Ridley. He's clearly the best receiver on the whole team. You can't leave Calvin Ridley that wide open. It shouldn't even be possible. Like, honestly, should not even be possible. Calvin Ridley was running down the field by himself. I could have hit Calvin Ridley. That's how open that guy was. But that being said, it's not like Jalen Hurts overthrew him, underthrew him, hit him in stride, touchdowns were scored. But here's where it gets interesting to look at the value of Jalen Hurts, is when you look at the situation. When you look at the score of the game, Jalen Hurts is better when Alabama's in trouble. Right? It's confusing. But when Alabama is tied or losing by 1 to 7 points, Jalen Hurts is a more accurate passer. He throws for more yards. And given the small sample size, an alarming amount of touchdowns. Right? Like, it's kind of insane. And this is not even accounting for, by the way, his ability to make plays with his feet when the game is on the line. Jalen Hurts does that about as good as anybody in the SEC. Though watching Nick Fitzgerald on Saturday, I would say that he probably does it better than anybody in the SEC, because Nick Fitzgerald is doing this with a whole lot less help. I'm looking at Alabama when they're in trouble, and you know that Jalen Hurts pulls it out. Saw it against Mississippi State this past Saturday. Saw it last year. Remember that low-scoring, ugly, hideous ball game between Alabama and LSU near the end of last year? I believe it was their third to last game of the season last year in Death Valley. And Jalen Hurts wasn't throwing the ball well all game. Alabama needs their young quarterback to make a play, and Jalen Hurts puts the team on his back. And when I watch Jalen Hurts, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I'm a Longhorn fan. When I watch Jalen Hurts, I see shades of Vince Young. Not in terms of, I think Vince Young is more athletic than Jalen Hurts, and I think he's a much faster runner than Jalen Hurts, longer strides and all that. But in terms of having that mentality that I'm going to make the play that carries my team to the win, I see it. I see it with this guy. And every time I watch him, I'm impressed. Then when you have statistically the passing numbers back it up. He goes from 7.1 yards an attempt to 7.7 yards per carry attempt in clutch situations. He goes from passing the ball around 55% to passing the ball around 67%. Right? He goes from 55 to 62 when they're losing. And if the game is tied, he shoots all the way up to 67% passing. He's thrown for 332 yards this season when the game's been tied, which is just as many yards as he's thrown for, roughly, as when Alabama's been winning, which is crazy because Alabama's mostly winning. He's thrown for almost as many touchdowns as he does, right? When Alabama is up by 15 or more points, he's thrown for 3 touchdowns. When Alabama's been up by 8 to 14 points, he's thrown for 2 touchdowns. When Alabama's been winning by 1 to 7 points, he's thrown for 3 touchdowns. When Alabama's been losing by 1 to 7 points or the game's been tied, he's thrown for 3 touchdowns. When Alabama trails by a touchdown or the game is tied, he's thrown 3 touchdowns. He's thrown well over 400 yards. His passer rating is through the roof. 305? When was the last time you saw somebody with 305 rating? I mean, it boggles your mind. Like the numbers back up that when Alabama needs Jalen Hurts to make a play, he makes plays. Right? And we wondered what happened because early on last season, Jalen Hurts did exactly this. He made plays when they needed him to make plays. But then down the stretch, near the end of the season, he wasn't able to do it really, right? Like we saw the struggles against LSU. We saw the struggles last year in the Iron Bowl against Auburn. We saw the struggles against Washington, right? They won the game, but they struggled. And then we saw it in the national title game against Clemson again. When they needed Jalen Hurts to make a play, he really wasn't there. But this year, it appears to be back. And I'll tell you, I think a lot of it has to do with Lane Kiffin. That Lane Kiffin is a guy, to me, I watch him and he's very brilliant offensively and he understands the game like nobody else. But he falls in love with his own play calling a little bit too much. And I think that held back Jalen Hurts. I think that it was detrimental to his development to have Lane Kiffin decide that I'm going to abandon the run here. We're just throwing the ball. That's not Jalen Hurts' specialty. He's not ever going to be this super-powered, high-volume passer. It's not him. That's not his game at all. And that's fine. But then you play to the guy's strengths. right? Like, there are just things in life that you can't talk to your friends about, right? Like for instance, you have that friend that just gets mad for no reason. If you start making jokes about his forehead and he just gets mad at you, what do you learn from that interaction? Oh, I guess I can't make jokes about this guy's forehead. He's very sensitive about his massive forehead. So you don't make jokes about his head, right? Even though his hairline looks like it's running away from his eyebrows, you still can't make jokes about it because you know he's sensitive to that. You know it. You got to play to his strengths. Don't put him in a position where he's got to consider punching you out over you making fun of the man's forehead. Well, it's the same thing here. I'm looking at it and I'm going, don't have Jalen Hurts throw the ball downfield 1,000,000 times a game if you know he's not a very accurate downfield passer. But if you keep the game balanced, if you keep your team balanced and you run the football in a balanced way, Jalen Hurts is able to use misdirection. He's able to use his general speed and the fact that actually as a short and intermediate passer, he's very accurate. And then if the game is ever on the line, Jalen Hurts can bail you out. And he's done it with Alabama. He's done it. He did it against Miss State this past Saturday. And I believe he's going to have to do it against Auburn. That Auburn game is not going to be a very easy game. And then we've got a nice little lull here between the Iron Bowl and now. Alabama's going to get the opportunity to play Mercer, who's 5-5. Even though Nick Saban's going to pretend like that's an interesting game to all of us, it's not. But he's going to pretend. We're going to see Jalen Hurts on display in the Iron Bowl because I think they're going to need him to be. And the numbers show you put him in that position, you put him in that situation, and he steps up to the plate every single time. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Our phone number is 423-800-8949, 423-800-8949. If you want to talk college football, high school football, the NFL. Got Thursday night football coming up. I actually don't know what the Thursday night game is. I'll have that for you tomorrow, though. We'll do our picks. We have a little high school action in the picks tomorrow, probably. Who knows? So there's a game that's interesting me, by the way, in the high school playoffs. South Pittsburgh and Whitwell. That game's going to be a great game. I'm very excited about that football game. And we're going to get to the coaching stuff because I've got more coaching rumors. Coaching rumors are fun. I just don't want to beat a dead horse. But I'm looking very, very closely at South Pittsburgh and Whitwell. And I did a write-up this morning and posted it on the Facebook page if you want to find out what's happening in our high school playoffs. I've been posting a lot of write-ups talking about the strengths and weaknesses of every team and what they have to do to win their next matchup against their opponents. And South Pittsburgh and Whitwell, very, very interesting to me because, A, it's a small school rivalry. And arguably, those are the most intense. Those are the most intense of all the high school football rivalries. South Pittsburgh and Whitwell, there's a lot of history there, right? So you've got that. And then you've got the fact that both of these teams are very, very good. South Pittsburgh, 12-0. Whitwell is 11-1. And both of them seem to not just show up and beat their opponents. They steamroll them. It's very hard to beat either of these teams because both of them have very stingy defenses. And you ever hear the phrase in boxing? I'm a big boxing guy. You ever hear the phrase in boxing that styles make fights? That sometimes you've got two great fighters, but their styles don't really mesh well. So when they go to fight, the fight's not fun. This one's going to be fun. This one's going to be fun because the styles match up. These are two teams that play very similarly. And what I like about this is when you have two teams that play very similarly, what I like is you're not sure what you're going to get. Are we going to get some kind of offensive eruption? Or are we going to get a defensive duel? Are we going to get something that grinds? because we're looking at two teams that to this point in the playoffs have both held their opponents to very low scoring totals and have scored over 35 points in all their games. Both of them. Right? And they both run the ball. A lot of wing tee offense and a lot of option plays. Both of them run the ball, and I mean really run it. South Pittsburgh really doesn't even throw the ball that much. Not interested in that at all. They can make those plays, but they're not interested in that. Whitwell is not interested in passing the ball either, but they're more interested in it than South Pittsburgh is, which is good because I think South Pittsburgh is the better defensive unit. I think South Pittsburgh might be the better defensive team. And so if you're Whitwell, don't show up and just try and run. Because we saw how well that went for Joe Burns last week, right? South Pittsburgh took on Joe Burns and beat him 42-0. Well, what does Joe Burns do? Joe Burns has a wing tee offense. They run the ball, and run the ball. And unless the person in the backfield is a titan, you're not breaking through South Pittsburgh's defense simply by running. You're going to have to go vertical. You're going to have to make this defense spread out and respect your passing game, or you're not going to have success running. That's what it looks like to me when I look at the numbers, when I look at the highlights of these teams playing. You're not going to have that level of success. So yeah, I see South Pittsburgh going to go, that's a tough out. But Whitwell, that team also, again, stingy defensively. I don't think as stout as South Pittsburgh is, but close. And look, they haven't been perfect this season. They've got one loss. And South Pittsburgh's the only team that put it there. So you have to look at it and go, well, they've got a whole lot to play for. This is a revenge game, and this is the second time that you're seeing an opponent. And that changes everything. When you see an opponent once, that's something. When you see them twice, that changes the whole game. And when you look at it, too, when you look at the NFL, for instance, and the reason why the NFL has divisional rivalries and why the NFL does such a great job marketing divisional rivalries is anybody can beat anybody inside the division because you're just so familiar with these teams that even though you're bad, you can beat them, right? Like the 49ers could beat the Rams and they couldn't beat the Cardinals. Why? Because the 49ers are terrible. Well, why is that possible? Well, the 49ers can do it because they're inside that division. They're so familiar with all of these teams that, yes, you can beat them. And you know you can because you know these guys. And maybe you don't win most of the time, but you win enough of the time because you see these opponents over and over and over again. Right? Like we always were surprised when Jeff Fisher was coaching the Rams that the Rams would ever beat anybody. The Rams were terrible under Jeff Fisher. And every now and then they beat the Seahawks. They beat the Niners when the Niners were good. If I'm not mistaken, they beat the Cardinals the year the Cardinals went to the NFC title game. Because you play them all the time. You're always butting heads with these people, so you know who they are. And I feel very similarly about this Whitwell and South Pittsburgh game, that just because South Pittsburgh won the first time and just because South Pittsburgh looks something like a juggernaut does not necessarily mean that they are guaranteed and penciled into some kind of victory over Whitwell. They're not. That's going to be a great game because the styles of these two teams match up incredibly well. They both play very similarly, but Whitwell's got a little extra dimension that South Pittsburgh doesn't. And South Pittsburgh's a little bit better at defense. And so when you look at the matchup of these two teams, we're in line for fireworks. We're in line for some kind of coming out party for somebody. And the fact that the title, a road to the title is on the line here. This is the kind of drama that you watch high school football for. It's like a movie. Like almost literally like a movie. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. So quickly with the coaching rumors, because the John Gruden rumors are on again, off again, on again, right? John Gruden says, no, I'm not interested in coming back to Tennessee to coach, which to me is obvious because his job at ESPN is so nice. I would leave when ESPN tells me to leave and not 1 second sooner if they're going to pay him the kind of money they're paying him to just watch football. Right? But John Gruden is a Vol for life. And there are rumors. The scuttlebutt around the streets is this. John Gruden's been talking to people about joining his staff. All right? John Gruden's also been connected to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers job. John Gruden winning his only Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and going back to return as Chucky to coach the Bucs might be in the cards for him as well. I just don't know why he would want that stress. Maybe that's just me. I just think that that's a really stressful position to be in. I would not do that on purpose. Again, maybe it's just me. What do I know? And what do you do if you're Arkansas? Because I think undoubtedly Brett Bielema was most likely done there. They fired their athletic director, Jeff Long, earlier today. And how do you replace the athletic director without replacing the coach? Right? We saw how well that went for Tennessee last year. It didn't really go that well. John Curry shows up. Butch Jones wasn't really embattled last year, but it wasn't looking great. And there was a point last season where ball fans were pretty upset with Butch then. John Curry shows up and decides to give Butch a year to show what he can do, right? Well, not the best year for Butch. And you're in a similar position if you're Arkansas, except Brett Bielema's not having a great season. Who do you replace Brett Bielema with? Right? Because Chip Kelly's been linked to Florida. Gruden's been linked to Tennessee. Actually, it feels like everyone's been linked to Tennessee. But the Arkansas job's a good job, right? Like for me, I look at schools in terms of, are you a traditional power or are you not? And Arkansas has history, has national championship history. And you can't look past that. Like if you're a coach and you're looking for a good job, try Fayetteville. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 24 hours. Alex Jones is next.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio.